Morning, church. Reading from the book of James, chapter 4. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Or do you think Scripture says, without reason, that He jealously longs for the Spirit He has caused to dwell in us? But He gives us more grace. That is why Scripture says, God opposes the proud, but shows favor for the humble. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and He will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning, and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. Brothers, sisters, do you not slander one another? Anyone who speaks against a brother or a sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. When you judge the law, you are not keeping it, but sitting in judgment on it. There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your neighbor? Now listen, you say today or tomorrow, we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why? Do you not even know what will happen to you tomorrow? What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. God bless the reading of His word.
Thank you, Paul. Wow, it's a lot in there, isn't there? I think we over this series, we've been reading a chapter at a time, and there's so much we can draw out of it, and so much maybe words, phrases that maybe even draw to your attention as Paul was reading it. And isn't that wonderful how God can speak to us even as we read the same passage? Different things God will draw to our attention. But we're in our series called Faith That Works. The book of James is really practical. It's not just theory and theology, but it's really grounded in application. It's really gives us instructions and wisdom for life of how to follow Jesus. And the people that he was writing to at the time had various trials and struggles, persecution and poverty and other things that were really, really coming against them. Yet James really encourages them to hold on, to keep going, to persevere, and to live for Jesus, even in a world of compromise and a world that's maybe pulling them away from the ways of Christ. And I just believe that it's really powerful for us today. We might not be in exactly the same context and situation, but we need to still look to Jesus and to live for Him and apply the wisdom that this book has for us. The book, the chapter, as we heard, talked a little bit about conflict and tensions. I don't know if you've currently got any personal tensions or conflicts. Probability, chances are there are. People, we fall out with others, don't we? We disagree. And sometimes it's on a big scale, isn't it? And we see problems all around the world. But I believe that it's so important that we learn to disagree well, that we learn to love, that we try and avoid conflict in the sense of things going pear-shaped and really going really badly. Because to some extent, some conflict isn't bad. We need to disagree well, and we need to learn how to navigate through some of that. But I think what James is speaking to here is something deep within us, a problem of the heart that we need to get right before God that won't spill out and overflow into conflict and unhealthy tensions that we could have avoided. So it's very, very practical. But as we see, we live in a world that is divided. And I've maybe shared this quote before, but it says a divided world needs a united church. We are not exempt in the church from falling out, from disagreements. Maybe you've experienced that, and it's a shame and a real sadness when we have that hurt and that pain. And we need to apologize. We need to have reconciliation and work through things. But I believe that as a church, we need to model unity. We need to model humility and resist the things that cause conflict in our world and in our lives. So I want to unpack that a little bit based on the passage we've read. But why does this matter? I always think it's really important that whenever you share a message, you've got to know the why. And a couple of things that this is important, this sense of unity and resolving conflict in our lives more and more, is because pride is the root of it, is what some of this we're talking about, leads to destruction. It's in the Proverbs. Pride, the root of a lot of conflicts that could be removed and dealt with better if we deal with pride. Pride leads to destruction. Humility, on the other hand, reflects the nature of Christ. Humility reflects the nature of Christ, so we're becoming more like Christ when we model humility. And this is, maybe with my sort of evangelistic lens on and passion, is that unity is a real powerful witness. Unity, when people see that we're together, just hearing some of Rosemary's story, like that's a proud moment as a pastor. When they say their love for the church and the welcome and the community and the journey with Jesus, like that fills my heart. It's sad that she's going, but we know that she's going on to another setting, and we bless her. And it's not just about Sturchley, but it's the church at large. It's the wider church. It's the kingdom. And I guess I just want to encourage you today that it can be so easy for us to gravitate towards being proud or to living with a prideful spirit. And it's really important that we lean towards humility and resist those unnecessary conflicts. So the message I want to say, and I'll give you some practical things from the book of James today, chapter 4. We want to move from pride to a place of peace. Ways we can grow in humility and wisdom. It's not always easy, is it? It's not an easy thing for us to do, but it's so important. So, so important. And the first thing I want to suggest that we do, a practical tool that we can live out, is to assess our heart's desires. What's going on in our heart today? Rosemary mentioned forgiveness a few times. Sometimes there's things that can get in our heart that maybe we feel that we're better than others. Whatever sphere, whether it's in your workplace, but even in a religious or a spiritual space, we might think that we're further on and we're better. But actually, it says here, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the desires that battle within you? So often we look at the surface things that are going on and try and work out where that came from. But so often, it flows from our heart. So I would encourage you, this is a good thing for us to do on a regular basis. How's your heart? Any hurt, any pride, any things that are getting in the way that maybe could affect our relationships? I think it's really important that James speaks into this, that maybe there's an essence of people becoming and tempted to become proud in whatever reason, or their misplaced desires as well. The things that they were longing for or pursuing were in contrast to the ways of God. They weren't in sync and in line. Conflict can come from misplaced desires. Things that we maybe think are important in this world, but really don't matter in the kingdom of God. I love the verse in Psalm 139 that says this: "Search me, O God, and know my heart." A great prayer. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. But then it also says, "See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." I think it's a good process for us to be reflective. We can so often go from next thing. Life is busy. There's so much activity, so much demand, and so much pressure at times in our lives. But it's important that we assess our heart. Bring it before God. Sometimes as well, the heart it reflects our worship. It's what are we prioritizing? What are we putting first in our lives? What do we say is most important? Because again, you see that tensions arise, conflict arises when the things that we put above what really matters. So it's good to keep evaluating that as well. He uses quite strong language, James. He says about friendship with the world as being almost like it's being adulterous people. It's very powerful. It packs a punch, doesn't it? I don't know the last time someone gave you that sort of direct message. But actually there's something really in that about loyalty to God or loyalty to the ways of the world. There's a thinking, a perception that the world encourages, values of the world that maybe just really go in contrast to the ways of the world. So like the worldly wisdom would be perhaps this intellect and being clever but without the holiness. Ambitious without the love. Maybe confidence but without humility. Or maybe we might even see success but without surrender. So we may see things in the world that may seem attractive and appealing, but they're not the ways of God. And just a question that we can ask ourselves if we're ever wondering, maybe a heart check, if we could just have the question on the screen, Ben. Does the wisdom that we're receiving or following, whether it's God's ways or the world's ways, does it make us more humble, peaceful, truthful, dependent on God, or does it make us more anxious, proud, competitive, or self-protective? I think it might seem quite a long question to ask, but just to reflect on what is it producing in us, the ways that we're following, the wisdom that we're taking on board in our lives more and more. So we need a heart check. We need to see, am I becoming proud in any area of my life? And the way to respond to that is the second thing I want to share based on James chapter 4, is to submit ourselves to God. To submit ourselves. So we assess where our heart is, but then it's really important that we continually submit and surrender. It's an antidote to pride. It's a way that we respond and do our best to prevent that taking root. So he says, submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. It's a great promise in the book of James, isn't it? It's a great reminder, a great truth, that when we submit ourselves to him, he comes close. He draws near to us more and more. Because it's very easy for us to take life into our own hands, to control situations and feel like we know what's best. But here, again, we're aligning our lives. We're going from a sense of, okay, there's something wrong within me. If we see that, we might have blind spots as well. But when we submit to God, he reveals things in us as well. He draws things out of us that we may not even knew that was there. So we pause, we pray, we align our hearts and selves with God. How do we do this? Again, different ways. We can admit our limits, recognizing our limits in life. It's hard to do at times, but receiving correction, repenting, that's like to turn from our ways, consciously, intentionally choosing to live a different way. Holding our plans loosely. You know, when things don't go to plan as well, you know, it's trusting God, submitting to him, and refusing superiority. Intentionally humbling ourselves before God. Timothy Keller, or someone I often reference and quote from one of his books, The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness, a great title. But he says, spiritual pride is the illusion that we are competent to run our own lives. We all need God. We all need his help. We all need his love, his grace, his salvation. And there's a temptation at times that we think that we're okay without him. There is a temptation to think that we've got this on our own. As soon as we're in that place, we're in trouble, church. I want to live a life where I know that I am always weak. I'm always broken. I always need God's love. It's only by his grace that he sustains us. It's only by his power that we're able to do the things that he wants us to do. Nothing of me. You know, yes, we partner with God. We play our part. But it's only by his work that's doing a great thing in and through our lives. So let's be dependent. You know, we're taught to be independent but in life in general, but we want to be people that are dependent on his Spirit, dependent on all his things that he provides in our lives. A couple of verses that speak to me on this theme of surrender and submitting to God. Galatians 2:20 and John 3:30. I think we need to speak this over our lives again and again, church, to fight the resist, the think that we're doing okay on our own. I no longer live. Well, I'm missing a word there, sorry. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. He must become greater. I must become less. Choosing that posture of humility before God, inviting him in again and again, saying, God, I need you. Where would I be without you, Jesus? You know, when we come into that place, there's just a real sense of like a perspective shift. We see the world differently. We think differently when we're relying on God, when we know that it's only by his strength and his power that we are able to do what we do. And it changes the way that we interact with people, talk to people, love people. Assess your heart. Submit to God. Allow the Spirit to do that deeper work in us. It's maybe, sometimes we think, oh, I can do this myself again. But thirdly, and there's just 4 things I want to highlight this morning, is to speak words of life. James, again, and Andy last week shared the importance of our words, the power in their tongue, the life and death. Words matter, church. Every conversation, every moment, like it's sometimes underestimated because we have so much we can say. But we must not be people that slander one another. Do not slander one another. I know it's maybe not uplifting and encouraging, but I think it's important that, again, so easy to fall into this place of criticizing. You know, I know we talk about online and people just saying things because there's a distance and they don't, know the person or see the person. But sometimes we can talk about people behind their back. Sometimes we can be judgmental of other people and think that we're better than them. Again, James is encouraging us as a church to reduce conflict, but to produce a sense of unity across the church, to speak differently, to speak words of life and not judgment. Let me say, a lot of conflicts could be avoided if we used our words wisely. A lot of conflicts could be avoided. We shouldn't judge others. And Jesus says this in Matthew 7. Why do you look at the speck of a sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? Again, a humility little nudge there for us all, isn't there? So often we can maybe see the faults and flaws of others, but we need to keep reminding ourselves of our own. What are we saying? What are the things that we talk about? Let us be people that speak words of life over each other, encouragement, hope, faith. I think, again, your words can make a real difference in people's lives. We've heard that this morning. It's so powerful. It's so true. And just in this area of speaking about others, I think I heard somebody once say that when somebody you're talking about somebody else, it actually reveals more about you than it does them. Again, it's really important that we speak words of life and encouragement and hope. The Proverbs as well, it says, let someone else praise you and not your own mouth, an outsider and not your own lips. We can be quick sometimes to big ourselves up and praise yourself. Maybe, I know this maybe not for everybody, that some may find it difficult to speak well of themselves, but it's more important that we just allow others to speak highly of us rather than us to do that ourselves. So we assess our heart, we check ourselves, we submit ourselves to God, we speak words that reflect that posture of humility and work for reconciliation and peace rather than allow a prideful spirit speak from that place. And then lastly is to do good. To do good. The last verse that Paul read this morning in this chapter, it's really, really strong, isn't it? If anyone then who knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is a sin for them. Wow. What a way to end the chapter. I know that it went on to chapter 5, and we'll look at that next week, but we don't just want to think with humility. We don't just want to speak words of humility, but we want to live a life that reflects Christ and really models that more and more. There's a friend of mine who's very skilled and gifted in so many different ways, but you just wouldn't think of it because he didn't big himself up. He was quite quiet, reserved, but he was very clever, very skilled. One of these good at all areas. A bit frustrating, annoying, but he just had a posture that he just loved people, cared, and was sharing, and he just continued to do good to others as well. And for me, just when maybe you can think of someone yourself in your life that is humble, that is kind, that does good, and acts on those opportunities and doesn't pass them by, as James instructs us to here. Again, in the Bible, so often we can see, do not do this, do not do that, don't do that. But I believe that there's also not just a resistance, but there's also a proactive choice that we choose to live a certain way. Lots of people will think that the Bible is just a book of rules of things that we shouldn't do. But actually, there's so much instruction for us to step into as well. I love the verse, I think it's the golden rule. Jesus says, do to others as you would have them do to you. It's not don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you, but it's a proactive choice to say, what would I want done to me? And then modeling that by being active in loving people, in doing good, in helping others. Again, because if you think of conflicts and you think of tensions and arguments and quarrels, if you're just loving people and just doing good, it's hard to argue with someone that keeps loving you. It's hard to, fall out with someone who keeps forgiving and patient and blessing you, praying for you. It's frustrating to be in that place, but it breaks down walls within church communities, within families, but within society. Let's not just think that we're going to do something. Let's do something. And it's when we take action that we really see lives are changed, hearts are softened, people encounter love. And again, I know that when people fall out and the heartache of relationships, it's very, very painful. So I'm not minimizing it at all. But I believe as a church, we want to see relationships restored, healed, families united. And again, we can be preventative, but let's also be proactive to create a better future. I think of the generations to come. They're looking at how we react and respond to disagreements, to falling out, where pride comes in. How do we handle those moments? So let's think with a posture of humility. Let's continue to submit to God, put Jesus at the center of all that we do. Speak with words of life and continue to do good. And let me just, as I come to land in just a moment, is Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. It says, whenever we have the opportunity, we have a lot of opportunities, church, we should do good to everyone, especially those in the family of faith. And forgive me if I've shared this before, but I used to wonder why, I think surely we should show more love to those that don't know Jesus. Surely it makes more sense. Let's show them God's love more and more and do good especially. But there's a message here again about this unity being a powerful witness. That when we love others, if people come in and there's fractions and divisions and falling out and fighting and quarrels and slander, who wants to be in part of that? No, I don't want to be part of that. But think of the opposite. When we're kind, we're loving, we're sharing, we're speaking hope, we're praying for people, we're doing good, we're loving. I'm up for that. And that's what this is about. That's the encouragement for us as a church, that we lean in and we do good. And yeah, we model something here. Of course we still love those that don't know Jesus. Of course we want to carry the gospel wherever we go. Of course the Spirit of God lives in us. But let's be people that love at all times. And I'll finish with this John Wesley quote. Forgive me if you've heard it before, but it says, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can." One little small act of kindness can change someone's life. One powerful word or one encouragement can change a conversation and a direction completely. Let's believe in the power of Jesus, and let's walk in that day by day and apply this faith that works and move from pride to peace.